In this video, I'll be showing you how to clean and organize your Airbnb data using Excel. In addition, I'm also going to show you how you can narrow down to a particular neighborhood or neighborhoods within your city or region that you've chosen. So here we are on our home page, and I'll go ahead and click on our Research Project button here. And it will take you to the instructions for our project for all of the pieces throughout the semester. And so in our part one, where you were to pick a city or region, the link to all the cities are right here. So I'll go ahead and click on this. So here's the page with all of our data sets of Airbnb data. I have a link here to the data dictionary. So this is the cheat sheet that explains what each variable is in our data set. There are 29 variables in our files, or 29 columns when you open it up and take a look at it. For our project though, don't worry, you're not analyzing all of the variables. You're only going to be picking maybe like 3 to 5 variables that you'll work on all semester long. But I wanted to have a variety of variables so students can pick different things to focus on. Now, if we scroll down, you can also see all of the data sets available by continent or region. And again, when you open up your file, each file is different in size. Some files have 15,000 plus lines of data. Other files maybe only have a few hundred or 1,000. So be ready for a large file to open. So while your original file is going to look very big, we're going to narrow it down and make it smaller and more manageable for you to work with. So I'm going to be using the Montreal, Canada file throughout the semester to demonstrate the different tasks that we're doing on the project. And all you have to do is click on the link to your chosen city or region. And every computer is a little bit different in the way it downloads, so make sure you find where it got downloaded to and open it. For some of you, when you open your file for the first time, you might see a banner up at the top in yellow that asks you to enable editing. So you have to click on Enable Edit, and that will let you work in the file and save it. If you don't click on that, you can't do anything to the file. My file is already ready to go, and I'm allowed to edit. When I take a look at my file is figure out, well, how big of a file is this? So you'll notice that some of the columns are squished together and they're a bit hard to read. So one trick you can do, I'm going to highlight a bunch of the columns, and then on any of the lines in between here, and it's got to be in the top, if I double click carefully, it will open the columns out to the widest width it needs to fit everything in. That will save you some time with moving things around. So I'm going to adjust this because I didn't need city that big. And I'll do that with ID. The next thing I want to do is see how many lines of data I'm working with. What I would recommend is just clicking on column A right here. What that will do is read all of the data points in this column. And if you look in the lower right hand corner here, there are some helpful pieces of information that Excel offers. And so you can see there's an average, a count, and a sum. Some of these aren't really that helpful depending on the variable, but what I'm really interested in is the count. Excel is telling me that there are 21,105 lines of information just in this column of data. Now, I don't want to be working with all 21,000 lines. I need to figure out how to narrow this down. So one way we can do that is by using a pivot table to organize our data just a bit so we can get a feel for the neighborhoods. So for some of you, you may already know which neighborhood out of your city you're interested in. Perhaps you have chosen Paris and you are really interested in a neighborhood called Temple. So you would just focus on that neighborhood. For other folks, maybe you've picked a city or region you're not as familiar with and you don't know what the neighborhoods are like. So this next step I'm going to show you will help you figure out, well, am I looking for the most expensive neighborhoods, the cheapest neighborhoods, the most popular neighborhoods, and we're going to do that with a pivot table. So what I'd like to do first is I will go ahead and click on Neighborhood Cleansed. So why don't I just open that up a bit? Neighborhood Cleansed. So all of our listings are grouped by their neighborhoods, and I'll go ahead and highlight the columns out to price. Now note that price here is the nightly price. We also have a weekly price option and a monthly price option. But I'm just going to do nightly because that's typically what people book at. And then I'm going to go up here to the Insert tab and click on Pivot Table and go ahead and click OK. So what it's going to do is it's going to create a pivot table for me, and it will allow me to organize my data so that you don't have to go through and count or manually organize the data yourself. Over here on the right side, recall I had highlighted a couple of the columns or variables, and they now appear right here. What a pivot table is going to ask you to do is organize how you want to see the data set up. So here I'm going to take that neighborhood cleansed and I'll click on it and drag it into the box here that says rows and let it go. And what it's done is it's found each unique neighborhood in our data set and listed it here as a row of information. Now you'll notice for my Montreal there are some funny symbols because of the way it downloaded and translated into Excel. As you work through your data, you can fix this by doing a quick Google search of how to correctly spell the neighborhood. But for the purposes of our data, this is good enough. It's workable. The next thing I want to do, perhaps I'm interested in how many listings each of these neighborhoods have. So I want to know how popular the neighborhood is. What we can do is I can go ahead and take that neighborhood cleansed here and click on that and drop it into the values box. And so what the values box does is it does something to our data, whether it's counting, adding, averaging, some kind of analysis. Some computers will default to count, some default to sum. So you just want to be careful what appears once you drop something in the values box. So I got lucky, it defaulted to count, which is great. But if it doesn't default to something that you prefer, the way you would change it is by double clicking on this label right here. And a little menu appears, and here are the options that your information can be summarized by. So here's sum, like it's adding up stuff. It can count, it could take the average, it can find the maximum number, the minimum number. So we're already at count, I'll leave that alone. And so now I can see which neighborhoods have a lot of listings. Now you can see though, right now our neighborhoods are in alphabetical order. And so if you wanted to, you could actually make a bar chart with all of the neighborhoods, and you can see which neighborhood visually has the most listings. Another way to take a look at this is if I right click on any of these numbers, I can sort from largest to smallest. And if I click on that, I can now see the most popular neighborhoods. And I'm just going to highlight that in yellow so you can see. And if I highlight my neighborhoods here, I can also see the count. See down here in the bottom right hand corner, these are the top 14 neighborhoods with more than 100 Airbnb listings. So this will help you decide, maybe I want to focus on this neighborhood because it has the most listings. When I click into my pivot table, it opens up the menu again. If you click away, sometimes that menu disappears. So just be aware, if you need that menu to open back up, just click anywhere in your pivot table and it'll open up again. Another way I recommend, if you're trying to figure out, I want an upscale neighborhood or an affordable neighborhood, is I would use price. So if I take my cursor and I click on price here, I'm going to drag and drop it into the values box. And again, you'll notice my computer defaults to count. Some default to other things. And so I don't need another count of price because you can see it's the same number as counting the neighborhood names. Not super useful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and double click on the label and I'm going to change it to average. I want to know the average price of Airbnb listings by neighborhood. And then I can go ahead and click OK. Now it's not the prettiest. I want to go ahead and make this into dollars. So I'll go ahead and highlight my data. And up here under the Home tab in the numbers, I'm going to click on dollar. And this is US dollars. If you are in a different currency, you'll have to click on the drop down and perhaps find the currency of your choice, or click into the more accounting formats. And when you go into currency, you can find all the different other currencies available. So here is our average price. Now again, perhaps I want to sort to see which are my more expensive neighborhoods. So if I right click on any of the boxes in average price and I go to sort, I can click on largest to smallest, and now I can see where my most expensive neighborhoods are. Here's where we can do a little bit of critical thinking. For instance, sure, this neighborhood up here is the most expensive, but we only have 5 Airbnb listings. So that's not really useful for me because analyzing 5 listings is not enough data. My recommendation is for your data files, after you've narrowed it down, you want to have at least 100 listings to be working with. And as we get into more data analysis, you'll see why having more data is better, but aim for a higher number of listings. So fortunately, earlier I had highlighted my most popular listings. I can see here that Villa Marie had a high number of listings and is one of the more expensive neighborhoods at an average of $142 per night. This can help me decide, hey, you know what, I'm going to narrow down to just this neighborhood called Villa Marie. So if I go over back to our tab of data, clicking near the top, you'll want to turn on the filters. So click on Data, the tab up at the top, and there'll be a funnel or filter button towards the middle, and that turns on the filters for all of our columns here. So this will let you filter and sort your data even more. But I've already chosen my neighborhood. I want Villa Marie. So if I go to my drop down and I uncheck select all and then scroll down, and this is in alphabetical order, I'll scroll down until I find Villa Marie. Now I only have the neighborhood of Villa Marie's listings available. But here's the thing to note. Just because I have it filtered doesn't mean it's ready to analyze, because all it's done is hidden all of the other listings. So if I start trying to do data analysis on this tab, it's going to analyze all the neighborhoods, and that is misleading. So what I have to do is I have to get rid of all of the other neighborhoods I don't care about so that I only have Villa Marie data. So the fastest way I've found to do this is to simply copy and paste all the rows that have Villa Marie. So the trick to do this is to click on the first box here and then hold the Control Shift button on your keyboard and then press the down arrow so it highlights downward, and the right arrow so it goes across, and then I'll go ahead and right click copy and create a new tab by clicking on this little button called New Sheet, and then I'll right click and go ahead and paste everything in. And so now, as you can see, we have a lot of data, but it's only for Villa Marie. And I can double check by turning on the filter, and if I look at my filter here, I can see I only have Villa Marie. So now as I work on this tab or this sheet of information, it's not going to get skewed or mixed up with the other neighborhoods. And if I double check, now I can also see how many listings are in Villa Marie. So I click on my column D and I look at the countdown here. There's 5,530 lines of data. So that's how I recommend cleaning up your file to get to the neighborhood of your choice. Now you might be interested in multiple neighborhoods, so you would do the same thing, but when you check the neighborhoods you want to keep, you would check the 2 or 3 or 4, however many neighborhoods you want to copy and paste over to a new tab. So the next thing I recommend is familiarizing yourself with some of the key variables. So property type is a really good one to take a look at, and room type, for instance. And if you click on the drop down of any of these filters, and I'm going to open this up a little bit bigger, you can see all the different types of property in this particular neighborhood of Villa Marie in Montreal. Do you want to have all of these property types available in your analysis? Maybe, maybe not. As you can see, there's a castle, a cave, a guest house, houseboats. I may or may not really be interested in all of these possible property types. I might actually prefer just focusing on the more traditional homes, like an apartment and condos and houses. Let me see if there's anything else. Maybe townhouse. So if I'm looking for the more traditional type of properties, I would just click on those and click OK. And again, it's going to narrow it down, and I can double check how many listings I have now. If I click on this, we can see it narrowed it down to 4819. So I still have a good amount of data, and I can keep doing this with any of the different filters we want. Maybe I want to do it by room type. So if I click on room type, there's three options. You can rent an entire home or apartment. You can just have a private room or a shared room. And again, maybe for my project, I'm only interested in entire homes or apartments that are for rent. So I can keep doing this and playing around with the different variables like bed type, a real bed versus a futon or a couch. Maybe I only want real beds. And I can keep doing this and it'll slowly narrow down my file. But remember, just by filtering it, I've only hidden it. I still need to get rid of those extras. So I would go again and do the copy paste where I'll Control Shift down arrow and right arrow, and then copy it, create a new sheet by using the plus button here and just pasting it down. And so now we have again cleaned our data a little bit more with using the filters and a copy paste. So let me go ahead and click on this. We are now down to 3,799 lines of information. So another thing we want to do, if I go ahead and click on my data and turn on my filters again here, is I want to remove any lines that have blanks. So if you look right here, you can already see that there are some blank cells. And so it depends. If I am focusing on the price column, which many, if not all of you will use, and I do a drop down, you can see all the possible numbers that are listed in my file. And fortunately, I have no blanks. So there's no mention of blanks at the very bottom of this. So that's good. So if I was just focused on price, then my file is good and I'm ready to go. However, let's say I'm also interested in security deposits. I can click on my little drop down, and if I deselect that, this $ with a dash, that means $0. And if I scroll down, I can see an option that says blanks. So I just want to see what that looks like, and if I hit OK. So now I've filtered just so that I have all the blanks and the zeros. So something you have to decide is, are you going to remove the lines or listings that have blanks or $0? Because for instance, anything with a blank, Excel will not analyze it. It just sees it as, oh, it's no information. But that might potentially skew your data when you're working with other variables. At the same time, you can see some of the hosts actually entered $0. That's where you see the $ with a dash. And Excel will analyze it. So it'll see this as a 0, and when it's analyzing average or sum or count, it's going to see it as a 0 value, which can affect your data. So this is where you have to decide which cells you're going to delete. Maybe I want to delete everything with blanks. Maybe I want to delete anything with $0. Maybe I want to delete both. One way to delete this is, once it's showing, you can just select them and right click and hit delete row, and it'll get rid of it. Or again, if you want to do a little faster, click on this row, Control Shift and down, and you can go ahead and right click and delete row. And then to remove the filter, I'll click on this and clear filter. And if I go back in, I no longer have $0 or blanks for my listings as it relates to security deposit. So these are the different ways you can clean a file. Use the filter to organize. You can copy paste what you want to keep, or you can right click and delete the rows you don't want to keep. You don't have to clean every single variable because, for instance, maybe I'm not interested at all in reviews. There's no point in me cleaning and deleting rows that have blank reviews. It's just extra work that I don't have to do. But I am really interested in price and security deposit, so I wanted to make sure I had good data in all of that. So if you have any questions, just let me know.